Hi, welcome back to episode 13 of Unbuttoned. We have our first guest today, which we're really excited about. I'll let Lauren introduce her.
Our guest today is Erika Karl, founder of Rituelle and owner of Hey Boom Creative. Erika is the go-to for all things wellness, clean beauty, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Okay, first I think I need to take my shoes off.
Do
I feel like you should have all your guests.
Yeah, I know, and our both on today, which never happens. Okay.
a cold glass of Sauvignon Blanc for you. So.
Next time. Oh, well, thanks, ladies. I feel really, really honored to be here. I love you guys, and it's so fun to have a conversation. And
I know.
Listen
It is going to be fun. And today we're going to talk a little bit about reinventing yourself and how most people come to like a point in their lives when they either feel a little bit like stale with what they're doing, they feel unhappy with what they're doing, but they don't know how to make a change, or feel like it might just be too much to make a change, or you're too quote unquote old to make a change, which is crazy. But we, and I don't know if you feel like this, you can share with us, kind of feel like change is like where you make the most growth and transformation. And we've talked about it before, like the unknown is the part where you learn the most. So just kind of talking about that misconception about starting over. And we're going to have Erika share a little bit about what she's done in the past to start and talk about just how you got to where you were today. So I just start maybe sharing what jobs you've worked in the past.
All right. Well, I started my career as a chemist. So
I always forget about that.
I know, it's so crazy to me.
it actually like feels like a whole other life. Like
I'm sure.
when I think back about those years, it was 5 years I worked as a chemist.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, I just like naturally was good
Yeah,
at chemistry at school, and like
that makes one of us.
And I was going to say those math skills earlier. I don't know if I'd say you're a chemist.
it was organic chemistry. I actually think this actually plays into, I'm a very creative person, and organic chemistry is all like drawings and how molecules interact with each other, and it's less of like the mathy
Okay.
pouring of chemicals type.
Yeah. Okay.
So it does kind of
That
like
makes
fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever even got to the level of doing organic chemistry.
I
Ever took a class.
did Chem 101. I cried every day, and I made my roommate's now husband do my homework. I swear to God, I can't.
No,
That is really cool though that you did that. You were doing like perfumes, is that right?
Yeah, no, I was doing, so it was cancer research drugs. Like we would take,
That's so cool.
it was really cool, but it was all theoretical. So we take like a cancer drug and take like aspirin and look on a molecular level how like they might interact, and then go through like people's papers and their philosophies, and just
That's
kind of
cool.
see if
Yeah.
those were true or not. So
Yeah.
it was actually all on the computer, no chemicals involved.
Interesting.
That's crazy. I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah. So were you in Chicago at this time?
Columbus
When you were a chemist. Okay.
And like, when you just like, you might be good at something, but it's not like, it doesn't light you up.
Totally.
You're not meant to do that. That's like not what I was meant to do with my life. And I knew
Totally.
that. And I would sit there for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm,
this
mhm.
can't be it.
Yes. Yes.
So
Totally.
yeah.
So then how did you make the move? What was your next endeavor after chemist?
So while I was working as a chemist, I interned at 614 magazine.
Oh, fun.
Yes. And I worked my way up to fashion editor. So the then fashion editor I was interning for left. And basically that job was like amazing because I made so many connections.
Yes.
But I would work 9 to 5 and then 5 to 10
Yeah, that's
on
like,
these shoots.
Yes.
But I learned so much. Like, who's going to hire you when you don't invest? I invested in myself to
Yeah.
show, like, when my next move, like, yes, this is what I went to school for.
Yep.
Chemistry, I didn't necessarily go for marketing or fashion, but
Yeah.
I did put my time in, and I
Yeah.
learned, and I think that people really respect that.
Totally.
So you see, like, a lot of times people want to make a change, but they're not willing to, like, they just
Put
want
the
someone,
work in.
to
Yeah.
invest in them when they haven't invested in themselves. Like,
Yeah.
it can be as simple as taking a course or
Totally.
getting certified or starting your own Instagram page to show an employer what you can do if you
Yeah.
want to make a move.
yeah. And I think that's such a good point. Like when I left teaching at first, I was like, I mean, I don't have any other qualifications. Like what on earth am I going to do?
Right.
But you're right. Like if you just invest in yourself and what you really want to do, it might take a little time.
Put yourself out
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Okay. So you worked both jobs for a little bit.
Yes. And then I met my now husband, and he was living in Chicago. So we did long distance for a year and then decided I would move there.
Yeah.
But you don't move to Chicago to work in fashion. Like, it's a food city, a drinking town.
Yes.
Like, so there weren't many opportunities, but I just knew like I wasn't going back to science or chemistry or even like medical device sales have been a good and lucrative move for me at the time. But I just like bet on myself at that point. So
I love that.
yeah. So I started, like to my previous point, I had like a little bit of a resume now about the marketing and fashion I'd been doing. So I just went out on interviews specifically for marketing because that's what I wanted to learn and to do. So I worked for a restaurant group. I really, really loved that job. And that's where like I learned a lot. And then after that, I started my own company a couple years later.
Amazing. Look at you.
That is amazing.
Just a marketing guru. I love it.
I know.
I really do. It's like amazing. Like you can do whatever you want to do if you just put your mind to it. Like truly. It sounds cliche, but like
it's so true. And it's like the thing that like keeps you up at night. Like I would be reading books about business and about marketing and like reading every online article I could. And that was like what I truly loved. And
you loved it. So it didn't feel like you were working.
Yes.
You were like eating it up because it actually inspired you.
Yes.
Which good for you for like recognizing and walking away from that job because it didn't just, because I do feel like a lot of people just get so complacent in like whatever they're doing, especially if they're good at it, even if it's like kind of boring.
Yeah. It's hard to leave that security. I'll tell you guys a funny story. At my wedding, my dad was talking about how I met Matt and like we had been dating for a while. And I was waiting for the call and I called my dad and I said, okay, he goes, at this point, she's off my payroll. She could subsidize a small family. And she tells me she's moving to Chicago to be a blogger.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Like your dad was probably like, oh Lord. But he's probably so proud now.
Well, I think actually like that's a good point to bring up. Like sometimes like my family is so lovely and supportive and they, graciously funded my education and I felt indebted to do what I went to school for and also to, like there's also outside pressures. It's not even just yourself. And I don't even think like if they listen to this, they shouldn't feel like they made me feel that way. It was me in my own mind.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about that, like how families can play a role. And that was one of the things that I know that a lot of people making a change like are scared of, how it's going to like affect your relationships, whether it be work, home, friendships, like in a positive and negative light, because a lot of time change brings people passing judgment they might not know, or like, oh, you've changed in a negative light. And it's like, right, that's what people are supposed to do. They're supposed to grow. They're supposed to evolve. So how did you kind of deal with that in some of your changes?
Yeah, I feel like, I do also want to say too, like it's not lost on me the privilege I had to make a change. Like I did have a savings, but I also had a supportive partner who gave me a buffer of time to be able to like, I got you, make sure you're doing what you want to do. And I know that that's not everybody's trajectory. So I do think it's like important that, just as some people can't be unsupportive, you have to like, there are the people that without them, you probably wouldn't be where you are. And you need to,
but that also being said, you took it upon yourself to work 2 jobs for a while, like that. I mean, you hustled hard to build that resume before that situation. So,
but let me tell you, in Chicago, those funds dwindle quickly.
I was going to say, it's not a cheap place to live.
And actually, that's a good point too. Like, there's sacrifices. Like, one of my best friends, I couldn't go to her bachelorette because I could only afford to go to the wedding. And was in the wedding, and you do make sacrifices. So I think like if you want to make a change, it's going to be tough, but
you do have to make sacrifices.
It'll be worth
times.
it.
Yeah.
So I completely didn't answer your question.
That's okay. No, that's
a lot around.
Yeah, that's okay, because that's actually something else that I think is important to note. And we've talked about that on our podcast before. Like, it's not lost upon us. Like, when I was a teacher, I stayed home with my kids for 2 years, and I did have the support of my husband, which I'm so thankful for. Not to say like we've said this, it's not like they like funded our endeavors, but they were supportive enough to let us like take a leap. So I think that is important. But not only just spousal support, but this kind of leads to the question too, just like friendship support, parent support. Like you said, you kind of put it on yourself that you felt like you had to do these certain things.
Yeah. I think one of the things I felt weird about in the past is like, I've been all these things, and like I was a chemist, and then I did the fashion editor stuff, and my friends all supported me, and now I'm moving to this job, and they all supported me, and then I started my blog, and I was like, are people looking at me like I'm a jack of all trades, and who am I to like specialize in this? And I kind of felt like, and that's again a story I created in my own mind. Like, my friends have reinvented themselves many of times, and I'm there behind them, their biggest cheerleader, and it doesn't matter how many times you zig and zag and change. I think the people who love you will be there to support you. And I wish like it kept me from doing a lot of the things I wanted to try and do because I was worried about what people would think about what I was choosing to do, if people thought I had been pivoting too much.
Right.
I think that's so valid because I have felt that as well. Like and you're right, you kind of put it on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of like, well, I can only imagine what people are saying about me or why, what does she know about this or that? Like, who does she think she is, some expert? But I feel like you said the zig and zag made me think of, I feel like when I switched my perspective of thinking of like life or career or anything like that, more so like you're taking a road trip and of course you're not going to drive straight the entire time. You're going to make a turn, you're going to take a detour, you're going to turn around, you're going to go under a bridge, like there's all these different things that you're going to encounter. It does not need to mean that you need to stay like straight path your entire life.
I love that. So actually Sheryl Sandberg, I think she was the CEO of Facebook. Her analogy is that like it's no longer a corporate ladder that you climb like in a linear fashion. It's a jungle gym. And I love that to get to the top, like whatever the top may be for you.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
And I think that is like the perfect analogy because, in the girl boss culture, it's like you work your way up to VP and then president, and then like that's not the trajectory anymore. And it doesn't have to be. And you can give yourself the permission to explore. Like we're multifaceted beings.
Yeah.
We change with, every, motherhood and you know what I mean? So you're allowed to grow and change.
Yeah. I think that we also, we've talked about how like you have changed, but what do you feel like in the midst of some of these changes has been the hardest aspect?
Hardest career pivot. I mean, I will say like going off on my own was the hardest. This is 10 years ago. This month I started my business and I had one side hustle client, again, always side hustling, I guess. So I was working in corporate marketing and I had one client and he honestly has been a mentor personally, professionally. He was the one who was like, I'll be your first client. And I think at that time, like I was so desperate for other clients to make up like my income at the corporate job. I think when you operate now, like now I'm a terrible business person because I work with someone because they come to me and I don't market myself at all. And that comes with time, but also living in the flow state, not forcing anything. And that is personally and professionally, like not forcing relationships, not like when you're operating from a place of like fear and lack, people can feel that.
Totally. Totally.
It's like if that's what you give off, that's what people are receiving.
Yeah. So I'm like meeting with all these people and I'm like, please hire me.
I know. But honestly, like you said, that guy who kind of took a chance on you, sometimes you just need one person to take a chance or believe in you, and it gives you kind of that confidence to like keep going and like get the ball rolling.
Yeah.
What was that moment for you guys? I'm curious. Like,
oh gosh, I feel like honestly the thing that stands out to me isn't necessarily directly career related, but like getting pregnant so young and so early on in my career and kind of feeling like everything that I had, back to the whole like trajectory that you like make up in your head. It's like, in my head I thought I would get married, buy a house, have babies. And like, that's just kind of how our society has always like, presented it. Yeah. So, and I also have always been like a perfectionist and I call myself a recovering perfectionist now, but like I had just started my first job. I was like loving it. I was working so hard and that just like completely threw a curveball into like all the plans that I thought I had then when I was 22.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight, it's like, I knew nothing then, and, that honestly though made me hustle harder, like having this new role of like becoming a mom and being a mom. It was like okay, now I'm not just working for some money to go out and buy drinks on the weekends.
Yeah.
Like I am working now to support a child. So like that really gave me a huge like fire under my ass,
Yeah.
honestly. Like once I came back from maternity leave, because I'm like, damn, like I gotta kill it, you know? And so that gave me a lot of motivation. And then from there, like I think the second hardest thing was walking away from my first job because I like loved
Yeah.
it. I loved it so much and it was so creative. But at that time, we had Benji and Peter was growing his business, and like one of us just needed to be a more present parent. And that was like hard for me. It was like
Yeah.
sad, and I felt like I was kind of like leaving behind like a really big piece of myself. And like I loved my team and everything. I learned so much in that job. But now looking back, it all led me to like doing
Yeah.
this for myself, which has been the best thing ever. So I feel like, you know, in those moments, that was all really hard for me to navigate so young, but it all worked out.
Yeah.
Worked out the way it is. And now, honestly, I kind of feel like anything that comes at me, like in business or in life, I have a different perspective. I'm like, it's going to be okay. Like,
Yeah.
we will figure this out. There are solutions. Like, it's not the world ending. Like, it's going to be okay. Which, I mean, that's helped me through a lot of things since then.
I love that perspective too, because I think a lot of people don't pivot and don't try something new that they
Right.
want to because you're not going to be good at it at first.
No.
You're not. You guys have learned like so much just in listening to your last episode.
Yeah.
It's like so many mistakes. You've got to give yourself that permission
Totally.
to fail. And it's
Totally.
like, the other day someone messaged and she's like in her 30s and she wanted to share more of herself online. And
Yeah.
you know, like I love like go on TikTok where no one is. And
Right.
start there and create. Don't tell anybody about it. And
Right.
start creating and learning. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Try
Yeah.
something new. I love that tip. Like,
Yeah. And back to your perspective on like just feeling nervous to like do something new because you're like, or do people think I'm like, this is random, like whatever I'm doing? But like, I just feel like who really cares, you know? And that's it's so much easier said than done. But
Yes.
it's like the older we get, I feel like it's like, why didn't I go for it at that time? Like, why did I
Yeah.
care what like Karen from high school, like
No
on
one has a
Facebook, like things?
spotlight on you and
Right,
your account like
right.
you do. And I thought another cool thing, someone said to me once, like, oh, you're disappointed you had 250 views on this video. But what if 250 people were sitting in a
You
room?
told me that one time and
Yeah.
it stuck with me. It stuck with me. Like
You're-
500 followers. Think if 500 people were sitting in a room listening to you. And that really stuck with me when you shared that with me.
And you never know who needs that message
totally.
that you're saying. It could be
Yeah.
one person, it could be 10, it could be all
Mhm.
500. But I
Mhm.
mean, I think like that, thinking of it that way
Yeah.
is like,
Yeah.
you know, we all have a story. We all have, as long as I think you're being authentic, there
Totally.
are room for new voices, new
Always.
businesses.
Mhm.
You know, and you're operating from your heart in a place of love and you want something to help others in some way. I
Yeah.
think who couldn't be down with that?
Yeah, totally agree. What
Yeah.
about you, Lauren?
I feel like
your
mine is a
transition
little
from
bit,
teacher to
Yeah.
a little bit different. I mean, you came from a marketing background, and so you had some skills
Yeah.
built up. Mine, I honestly looked at my life when I was younger because this is what my mom did, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. But I
Yep.
thought that this is what I was going to want to do: go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, probably stay home,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
love it. And I did that. I went to college. I got a teaching degree. I started teaching, which I liked, but I quickly realized it's maybe not exactly what I wanted to do. And I just kind of fell into that career because it's just what I always thought I needed to do or wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then I had my first and I took a year off and stayed home. And then COVID happened and I had my second and I took another year off. And then I realized that my personality is I love something to work towards. I am a really if I have like my eye on the prize, I'm gonna
Yeah.
get there. I'm a really hard worker. And with teaching, obviously the reward comes from like your students learning, and that's amazing.
Yeah.
But there really isn't anywhere in the teaching field that there's like professional growth.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying like I wanted to be like a ladder climber, but like
Yeah, you're
there
right.
is,
have to
you're
have
kind
that,
of
though,
just
yeah.
like you can look at the teacher in the classroom next to you and they could be just skirting by and you're putting in all this work, and there's a little bit of like, okay.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just like, yeah, and I just know myself, and I'm the type of person who like loves the hustle. I love the reward of like doing well and this and that. And so I was like, I just don't think I can go back to teaching. And then I was like, well, maybe I want to do something part-time. And I just wanted to kind of like dip my toes in the water and explore and learn about something new. And I had sent Elizabeth an email just on a whim, which now when we look back at it, we like crack up. But which honestly, it was so professional. And when I think about it, I'm like, I don't remember the exact time, but I'm like, I probably wrote it and sat on it for a long time thinking like too nervous, like, no, who do I think I am? I'm not going to do this, all that. And then we started like in a whole different avenue realm together. But I think that also encouraging each other helped me gain the confidence to be like, yeah, I can do this. Yeah. And I don't need to have the like quote unquote college degree in this. And it's honestly been so refreshing. And I feel like it has lent itself so much more to my personality than the career before. Not that there was anything wrong with that career. I feel like this has lent itself more to me feeling more fulfilled and happy. Yeah. And I'm like, I feel like I'm so glad I took the change. Now it didn't come without like judgment and, at first it was a lot of people like, oh, you're quote unquote working. You're not working. Yeah. You're like,
like not taking you serious.
It was not a joke, but like, it was not.
I get that all the time. Like your job, I don't even think people mean to be mean. They're like, your job's so fun. You try on clothes or you go to events and photo shoots, but they don't see the late nights. They don't see the early mornings. They don't see you sweating in the back unboxing things.
That's the thing. It's like everybody sees the fun part. And you're like, oh, I wish I could go to work and just like play around with my friends. And I'm like, that's the part we show you. Yeah. Like you don't see the deep like business conversations or like you said, opening the boxes in the back or tagging all this stuff or barcoding or
financial meetings and looking at spreadsheets.
I was literally just going to say trying to be a CFO when you're not. And then like the month end when you're like, so many things.
But I think we've both realized like it's okay to say like, okay, they don't see it. That's their perspective. Right. There's two perspectives and two sides to every situation. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And I think that that's part of the reward sort of is like, there's so many challenging aspects. Like, we're all in very small businesses. It's like we all wear 700 hats that we don't really know how to wear right. Yeah. But it's also so rewarding when you figure something out and you're like, okay, yes. Like it's the best feeling.
And what I love about you guys too is like you're not gatekeepers. Like once you figured it out, if someone asks you and they're like a quote unquote competitor, I'm the same way because I believe in karma and like what you give, you receive in all aspects. Yeah. And like, I'm for women. I am for women succeeding, for being financially independent. So I'm happy to help. Like, I see it as the more female-owned marketing businesses in Columbus, the more for the rest of us.
It's because so true.
It just lifts up what's possible.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that on a previous podcast, like the collaboration, when you just lean into collaborating and building relationships, like you never know where it's going to take you. Like, for example, until we like build a relationship, like we didn't get to know you that well. And now I'm like, oh my God, you guys need to check her out. You need to check out her podcast. Like it's so true. It's so true because once you start cheering other people on instead of working against them, like it truly like brings such a satisfaction.
That made me just think of like, I was like, at what phase did I meet Erika?
I was thinking this morning.
Like Erika and I met when I was still just blogging. And like she invited me to this event she was planning, which was so nice of you. And I was like so excited that you even like reached out because I had like, I had just started, I feel like, or I can't even remember. What was that event called?
Yeah, but the thing about you that I've always like known, and for anyone listening, it's not about the numbers. It's about like, I don't care if someone has 100,000 unengaged followers.
Totally.
You have always had just like a great community. And it's because you have this gift of both of you of being like 100% yourself. Like what you see on the camera is what you get in person. And I lived through the influencer age in Chicago. I was in an event 3 to 4 nights a week and there was no community. Like it was the people were cutthroat. They didn't look like they looked online. Yeah. They were mean, not friendly. And
I can't imagine.
There's nothing worse than meeting someone and you're like, well, they were not what I expected. That's not what I saw.
Yeah. It was like such a, dead. So when I moved back to Columbus, I just really wanted to surround myself with people who are who they say they are. Yeah. And, so anyways, we met at the event. And I actually remember we had coffee and you told me about Lauren.
Oh, yes. We met for coffee right after I met you for the first time.
Okay.
I always forget about that.
Yeah.
And
we met that.
At that same time, you told me you were going to do Coco digital styling and I cried. Remember?
Weren't you pregnant?
Yes. Which I still was very happy for you, but very so sweet. Like, also hormonal, but I was like so happy for her. I started crying.
God, that was so sweet. I completely forgot. You were like, I'm sorry.
Because I do remember, because I distinctly was like, yes, you are meant to share in this way and like help women like go a step further than just what you link or share.
Yes.
Like so one-to-one, I was like, yes, that's perfect for you.
Yeah. I also like just thinking back on that phase, like I started blogging just because I like knew I needed like some sort of creative outlet. But like now in hindsight, I'm like, God, that helped me through so many hard times. Like just like talking to strangers about like relatable stuff. Like I was in such an isolated place when I was the first one to have kids and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I would share random things on there. And I'm like, I'm so grateful that I like, even if I didn't ever meet these people, like just knowing like I'm not alone. Like that really helped me through so many of the like really tough, like in the weeds, like parenting moments. So again, back to like reinventing yourself. Like, I mean, I look back at my old blogging photos and I'm like, wow, but I'm so grateful for it because it really did help me through some
But
really
it also
hard
just
stuff.
shows that you've evolved with the times.
Totally.
It comes back to like, it's okay to make a change.
Yeah.
Like your blog at the time fit the time.
Yeah.
And it would be silly if it still looked the same or it's still the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's change is good.
Totally.
People are intended to like change and evolve throughout their life.
You're feeling like you want to make a change. I think make sure you're going into it with your whole heart and you're not doing it just because of the way it looks on the outside.
Yeah.
Because how many, like I've been guilty of this, like chasing something and trying something because someone else has it. It looks good and I think I want that.
Yeah.
And then I get there and I'm like, oh,
Like this isn't what I want.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also, that's a really good point. And like being able to say no and say, this isn't for me. I want to pivot again. I want to try something different. Or even like you saying that made me think of like the balance and being yourself in the fact of like, there's a life outside of your job. There's a life outside of the internet, like taking the time to spend with your kids and taking the time to be with your family and like putting a pause and saying, it's okay. Like my world doesn't have to revolve around my choice of what I'm going to do for work.
Yes. Yes. And I just like in the last few years have, you know, I have had everything I ever wanted in my mind, like healthy kids, great husband, love our home and our community. And like, you know, work wise, I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
Right.
But I like looked in the mirror a couple years ago and I'm like, I am burnt out. I can't even enjoy this life I created for myself because I hustled so hard. I was on 24/7 and now I'm in this just calm era of
that's so true. I feel like there's a period of hustle when you start something new, but then you do come to a point where you're like, okay, now I need to slow down or else I'm always going to be doing this. And Elizabeth and I have talked a lot about that. Like the first 2 years of this was like hustle.
And it needs to be sometimes.
And it has to be. But now we keep saying like the splitting up some of the things, like you go here, I go here. And like, it's okay to say no. It's okay to prioritize. But I also think that's being real and people appreciate that authenticity of saying like, yeah, it doesn't need to be all or nothing and that you don't have to know everything about one subject. Like you're going to learn along the way. And that's just the other like beauty of forming relationships and connections with people is you learn from everyone you meet something different, whether it be work related or, I mean, it could be anything that you learn from somebody. And I'm like, it's just important to like stay open and you know, connect with other people. But I just have always found it amazing how you've pivoted in your life and how you've done so many different things, but stayed authentic and not like, you know, I remember the first time meeting you, I was thinking to myself, and I'm honestly pretty sure I said to Elizabeth, like, is she going to be the same as she is online? Like, because I feel like you do meet people and you're like, okay, they weren't. And I remember leaving and we were like, I was like, okay, she is so sweet. And as you are online. And I think that that's like, you know, you make that come through online and that's amazing. And also now pivoting more into the marketing space and this podcast space, why we wanted to work with you too, because we know how like authentic you are. So
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, I have like a problem with oversharing. Like I
Me
just
too.
can't. Someone's like, "Your hair looks beautiful." I'm like, "Thanks, it's fake. Here's where I go."
Oh,
And
me too.
I can't.
Me too.
So I just like can't help but be myself.
Yes.
And I just, not that I felt like this way with you, but I never never want anyone to feel lesser than in my presence. Not that think I'm better or anything.
Totally.
Like I always just want people to feel uplifted when they leave.
Right.
And I just want people like, you know, in business and like personally to just like feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
Be the best they can be. And
Totally.
'cause I've been there when I didn't feel so good.
Right.
About
And like
myself
we always say, like, be careful who you are stepping on your way up because you're going to need them on your way down. Like it's
my gosh, I
so
love that.
important to like
Yes.
just be yourself with everyone and be kind because you never know when you're going to need somebody. Yeah. So we appreciate that you are so authentic. And like we said, check out Erika, not only on Instagram, but her podcast. She's amazing.
Yes. And we're going to have you guys on soon too. So
Love it.
Tune in.
Thank you so much for coming today.
This was so fun.
Of course. I know I loved it. I could talk for hours.
A million more things to talk about.
I know. We'll have to do it again.
Part two.
Yes. I love it. Well, thank you.
Thank you.